Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
What is going on, Beastmode?
Man, not a whole lot. I can't believe our pre-prep conversation that we had today. I'm excited to get everybody in on it, but it was just a really enjoyable time. Thank you, Howie, for that. It was really fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. You know, there's a lot of stretching going on right now in the marketplace due to the pandemic, due to disruption, due to political unrest. There's a lot of things, and racial unrest. There's a lot of things that are causing people in the business world, in their career or in their businesses, to have to stretch. And so what we want to do is talk about stretching for growth. It's likely to be a couple, more than one podcast session. So we can dive right in, but stretching for growth is the topic. And this first one we'll call mindset. Stretching for growth mindset, which was a good idea.
And I think we're going to do more of like we're going to do more of like an interview style. Yeah, I'm going to ask you, and then we'll just kind of piggyback how it goes. So for you, what would you call a definition of what is stretching?
Well, when it comes to career or when it comes to business, I think stretching is a time that whether you're forced into stretching beyond what you think your capacity is, or maybe it's even in business, there may be times when you're literally stretching beyond your capacity. And that could be because you are faced with a downturn, or it could be because you're faced with an inventory problem, or you're faced with a difficulty in hiring the right people. So stretching has so many forms, but basically it's adversity along the way to growth. And that it could be career growth or business growth, but any kind of adversity introduces really an opportunity for stretching. I'm feeling that right now. I mean, we talked about this in the prep, and our prep was awesome. It went longer than we thought. But I'm stretching right now because of, this COVID layoff. And so I'm stretching a lot. I think I've had 8 interviews in the last 2 days, and all kinds of different roles that some of them are a stretch, and some of them I'm having to really think about in terms of a lot of factors stretch related. So yeah, I mean, I relate to this one pretty personally today.
Yeah, I really like the word that you use, adversity, especially when we're talking about business. I do think, though, that stretching is intentional. Intentional because I'm looking for a specific goal to be achieved, or I'm looking for a specific outcome or outcomes. And so it may be, and I think we're going to jump into this, but it's an adversity that, in my mind, that has a specific outcome. That's that's seeking a specific outcome.
I like what you said, because if it hurts, the reason why I know it's intentional is because if it hurts, that means you didn't run away from it. It only hurts if you're facing it. And so good news to everybody. If you're stretching in your situation with your career or your business, if you're experiencing pain, that's a sign that you're engaged and that you care and that you're aware of the situation and that you are not fleeing from that. You're not running away from that. So I think that's actually a good sign that you're trying to engage with that, which means that the stretching can actually do its work.
And I don't think that there's ever a time that we should not be stretching. And what I mean by that is, if you're a beginner, couch to 5K, you have to stretch, and your purpose for stretching is a lot different than if you're a marathon runner. But you better believe marathon runners stretch, and they stretch a little bit different. Maybe they stretch a little bit more specific in the muscles they're stretching and how they stretch and the exercises they do it, versus somebody who's just trying to, get a little flexibility so that they don't cramp up, But if we are not stretching, that's a point where I would throw up red flags.
Yeah. And I think it's, we talked about it in our chat beforehand, and I think it is a mindset. You use the word mindset. I like that a lot. I think really stretching is a mindset that instead of seeing that stretch as destruction or failure, you're choosing to understand that as a stretch. And you're
Mm,
choosing to understand that, so that it doesn't actually stop you. So a
yeah.
part of that is really interpreting your situation as stretching and making the choice to say, you know what, it's hard. I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm struggling, or whatever. But I'm aware of that. And now I'm choosing to understand that I'm going to face that. And the
Mm,
choice of facing that is really comes back to your mindset you talked about.
yes. And oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts. But the intentional engagement in the stretch, it allows my mindset to be positive versus if I'm in a stretch and I have a negative mindset, meaning that I don't want to be stretched or I feel forced to be stretched. Now I may be uh, tensing up, physically, mentally, emotionally. And now I'm fighting the stretch, which makes the stretch even more difficult. And so the mindset approach of recognizing I'm in a stretch. And so instead of combating this stretch, I'm going to intentionally focus uh, on going with it, going into the adversity, allowing the stretch to do what it's supposed to do. Um, Maybe take it in spurts. I think we talked about that. Whenever you're stretching for a run, you don't just sit there and stretch for 30 straight minutes. You take little intervals. And so understanding that maybe this is more of a sprint as opposed to an all out war on it. That
Good.
makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think mindset, choosing to understand adversity on the way to your success, choosing to understand that as a stretch is good. Perseverance is really important as well. I think as part of mindset, when you engage with that and it hurts, or you have fear, or you have doubt, or you have anxiety, or you have you're lacking resources. The stretch in those times does come with grappling with that. And so, for example, if you have a resource problem, creativity can come and help you in that moment, but only if you engage with it and you stretch with it. And so that's what we have to do sometimes, is that we have to understand that the stretch, by engaging with it, that's when we grow. It literally has to be something that you mentioned to me in the prep. Literally, it's a gift, because you
Mm,
have to go through these times or else you're not going to grow. And so I thought that was also good.
yeah. And so when we're moving on to our next point, the point that you had is looking back to look forward. Unpack that.
So looking at some of the stretches that I'm facing in my career at this second that we talked about 40 minutes ago that are real,
Mm,
I have, multiple opportunities. Some of the things that I'm looking at, and I've been on the market for 4 months. So the fact that I have, multiple opportunities is a lot of work, to get to the grace of God too, for sure, but a lot of work to get to this point. And I know a lot of people out there hurting and don't have multiple opportunities. So you may be like, well, that's kind of a privilege problem, but it really has taken quite a while, and you'll get there. And feel free to hit me up or hit Beastmode up if you want some tips. In fact, we are planning on doing probably after I get the job, actually, on doing a dedicated podcast about techniques that I know is the market's really desperate for right now. But yeah, looking back, so what I'm doing right now is I'm looking back and saying, okay, look at all these different sales teams that I've run, which has been like numerous. I don't know, 15 or 16 sales teams since 2001. So a lot of work in there. Faced, I don't know. I'm not going to say I faced every conceivable problem, because that's impossible, but I faced a lot of them. And so looking back and what I've accomplished and being able to stretch at those times does help me think about interpreting and having the mindset of attacking the next things with the same creativity and applying myself and stretching in those ways. So looking back to looking forward is a way of, it's kind of a meditative exercise. And if you guys pray, I recommend that as well. But if you don't, a meditative exercise to look back and think about what you've accomplished and write down 5 business challenges that you've been able to conquer. I think it would be a very medicinal thing if you guys, write down, here's some of the things I've accomplished. And you know what? The next challenge, it may be a stretch. It may be hard. You may not know what to do initially. But guess what? Most people in your situation, when if facing exactly your situation, would also not know what to do. That's part of why we get paid, is because we are developing solutions. So that's normal to feel that way. And so I have some of those thoughts right now. So I'm looking back to look forward. And Beast Mode and I had a great conversation, and he was helping me do that, kind of unpack some of that. And that was really good. So I really recommend looking back to look forward to help encourage you.
So let me try to put this in layman's terms from what I heard. And so looking back to look forward is looking back at previous times whenever maybe you or your business or something has been stretched. And again, whether it was actively and intentional, or whether it was passive, or whether it was forced upon you. This pandemic forced a lot of stretching on a lot of people,
Yeah.
and it's still forcing it on people who are refusing to take an active, intentional approach to the stretching. And so, what you're saying is to look back on past times and realize it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. It also, I did make it through it. I didn't die, you know, and that the worst possible outcome probably didn't happen. So we're looking back to remind ourselves that in the middle of this stretching time, again, hopefully, as you're listening to this or towards the end, you're going to change your mindset. If you haven't already changed it when you came in to an active, intentional approach to this stretching, you're going to look at this time and say, just have a totally new mindset of, I can do this. This is for my greater good. There's so many possibilities that are going to come from this. Um, and so I think that's going to move us into our next question for you, and that's preparedness. How do you prepare for stretching?
Well, in my current circumstances, the way I've prepared for that is facing the reality that I have this stretching that I have to go to tackle. I've prepared my mindset. First of all, I've decided to face the job hunt with a lot of effort and a lot of energy and organization. But preparedness did come down to a lot of steps. And here's what I really found is that the preparedness when you're stretching for growth, anybody with a plan is going to be boss over somebody who has no plan. So your plan isn't, if you think your plan has to be perfect, and I'm a Enneagram type 1, so I do a little bit too much, worrying about the perfect plan and perfectionism. So I'm speaking from a place of humility here for sure. But if you're like me, or if you have any tendency to be, worried that, well, is it the right plan? It's, as Jordan B. Peterson says, it's not. What do you know? Right. And so that approach should free you and me both up to say, gosh, you know what? Preparedness means doing your best, writing down a plan, look at your circumstances. You've already looked back to look forward. So we've got some context of what worked in the past too. And then preparedness is basically going and writing your plan and taking steps towards your plan. You're not going to stretch. That athlete you talked about, they're not going to stretch if they don't get into the stretching position and start stretching. And they have a stretching methodology. So yeah, preparedness just means really writing your plan down and investing it the time to go walk through some of that plan. And in my case, I've done, frankly, some rather innovative things that are, I'll tell you one of them that I've done. One of the things I've done during this job search, I have maybe 65 recruiters. They don't even know this. I have maybe 65 recruiters that I have a relationship with that I've had conversations with over the past 4 months. I have them in a HubSpot CRM, and I have a sequence of, Beastmode is not surprised about this, but I have a sequence of 5 personally written, very carefully written emails, but then I actually personalize their name. And every 5 or 6 days, they all get the next one in the sequence. And then they all think I hand wrote it for them. And it is very short and handwritten. It has that feel, and it is intended just for them, and it is personal just for them. I'm not spamming them, but it's a methodology, right? And this has gotten me so many callbacks and so many email responses. And imagine having yourself on the radar blip of 65 recruiters every 5 days, right? I have a pretty good target audience because of that. And, it has led to some very, very good activity. So if I would have sat around worrying about my preparedness, not my email message not being perfect, or I don't know how to use HubSpot or whatever it may be, then I would be paralyzed and I wouldn't be stretching. But I faced it and I created a plan. It's not a perfect plan. And I applied a little bit of innovation and a lot of sweat to that, and it's been very successful. And like I said, now I've got 2 or 3 job situations that Lord willing, I hope the next time we talk, I'll be able to say that we're close to an offer for a job. So yeah, preparedness mode for me is just really starting with a plan, knowing it's not perfect, and then putting effort behind your plan.
Yeah, we spent a whole episode in our last series, Building During Difficulty, talking about planning. And there was one of the quotes that you talked about, which is creating an ugly plan. Is putting something down, getting a couple bullet points down. That this is the next step. This is where we're heading. And I totally agree. Same thing right here with stretching. You got to have a goal or 2 that we're looking for, and then be flexible in the sense that things change. I can adjust my goals to be more specific and greater, or I can step them back. Again, sometimes whenever you go for that first stretch, you realize maybe I need to do this stretch sitting down versus standing up, and you adjust, and that's okay. But that leads us into our final point for today, and that's growth pains. So what is growth pains when it comes to stretching in business?
Yeah, so growth pains, really what that means is that along the way, you're going to fail. Whether it's, during your work process, your work search process, your business growth process, but you're going to have some failures. But that's part of stretching. The first time, just like Beastmode just said, the first time that you stretch, you may have to be seated, and you probably won't stretch very far, and you're going to feel like, you're very old, and you're not, but you're going to feel that way because you can't stretch very far, and it's going to feel like you're a failure, and you're going to feel like a fool. Why did I try? But again, that goes back to that mindset that Beastmode was talking about, and it's having awareness and capturing those thoughts and taking those thoughts captive and interpreting them in a positive way. You have to be kind to yourself. That's one of the things that Jordan B. Peterson talks about too, is treat yourself like someone who deserves to be taken care of, something like that. And so understand that failure is normal, and even, stretching, there's going to be moments that you're going to feel like you're failing, or you're going to feel inadequate. But again, facing that pain and continuing and pressing through that is really the key. And if it hurts, and if it feels like failure, that's good news for you. And this is so weird, but a lot of times you have to flip things around. But remember, if it hurts, the good news is you're engaged and you didn't run away, and so you are eligible for that stretch benefit. If you run away or you don't face it, you're not eligible for that stretch. And then you're to yourself and to your family and to your future workers and bosses and employees, you're not going to be able to have that testimony and have the wisdom to pass along.
Yeah, I love it. Growth pains are normal. We should expect it, especially whenever we're intentionally, actively engaging and stretching. We should recognize that that's part of the process. Again, if after 20 minutes you're still having trouble intentionally, actively engaging, what you're going through, and trying to not spin it to a positive, recognize that it is a positive. That I have that choice, and be grateful for that choice to choose to say I'm gonna piggyback this stretch, and I'm gonna do it intentionally. And so, understanding that, again, it goes back to mindset, goes back to gratitude, and just like you said, knowing that even in failure, what could be perceived as failure, or even overall failure, not all growth pains result in positivity in that moment. Knowing that it's a learned lesson, just like Edison with the light bulb. He had 2,000 different tries before he got the actual light bulb.
Good example.
And so it's a growth pain. He knew exactly what not to do the next time. And so But that's part of being actively and intentional and engaging in stretching. And so we want to thank you guys. I know that you guys could listen to other podcasts and you could engage everywhere else, but we're thankful that you guys engage here. Where again, our podcasts are on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, everywhere, every major podcaster that's out there. And again, we're on social media, so engage with us. I know Howie's got a lot of great wisdom and insights in this time of intentional stretching for him, and so we encourage you to do so. So until next week, thank you, Howie.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thanks.